We tend to see Japan as a dreamland, the perfect country, a land of politeness, discipline, honesty, and unmatched cultural depth. A place where everyone lines up, no one litters, and everything runs like clockwork. It's perfect, or so we think. The classic ideal Japan fantasy. Must be the weeb talking. But can we blame people? Most of us who've been to Japan had great experiences. Take this for example. If you ask a local for directions, even if they speak zero English, they'll still try their best to help you. That's just how kind they are. Here's a tip. When asking for directions in Japan, always start with, "Excuse me, do you speak English?" If they say no, don't even ask your question, because even if they don't understand a word, they'll still try to help. That's how much they care, and they really are that polite. Not the sorry thing, keep being evil kind of polite, but genuinely empathetic. Like when there's no trash bin around, Japanese people will keep their garbage in their pockets until they find one. Why? Because they understand that throwing trash on the ground affects everyone. That's collective responsibility. And don't get me started on their work ethic. You know instant noodles? That's Japan. The brand Nissin? Japanese. They didn't just create instant noodles, they created cup noodles. That single invention changed how the world eats. From college students in the US to workers in Nigeria, Japan fed them all. You see, Japan wasn't always this way. In fact, if we rewind history a few decades or a few hundred years, the Japan we admire today would have looked a lot more like Konoha during wartime. Suspicious, hierarchical, brutal. Old Japan wasn't all cherry blossoms and discipline. It was feudal, backward, sometimes even monstrous. Take Hitobashira for example, a practice where humans were buried alive under buildings or castles to bless construction projects. The idea, their souls would guard the structure from floods, wars, or evil spirits. Tourists now flock to these castles, unaware they're standing on actual human sacrifices. And unlike certain places where sacrifices are hidden or accidental, in Japan these people were often fully aware. It was deliberate, chilling, right? Now let's talk agriculture. There's a practice called shimogo, which basically means fertilizing crops with fresh human poop. Yes, fresh. Not composted, not treated, just straight up feces smeared onto vegetables. But you can wash it, right? Sure, but bacteria doesn't care. And fun fact, in Edo era boarding houses, landlords make more money selling tenants' poop than renting the rooms. The richer the tenant, the more expensive their poop, because wealth meant better diet, which supposedly meant higher quality fertilizer. Imagine your salad being grown with the feces of a samurai, an old man, and a traveling monk, all blended together for their perfect harvest. Disgusting? Absolutely. But real? Unfortunately, yes. Now onto the samurai, the iconic warrior class of Japan. We often see them as stoic, noble, honorable swordsmen. But reality? Far more complicated. There was a practice called Shudo, which translates to the way of loving, but it wasn't romantic. It referred to sexual relationships between adult samurai and their young male apprentices, or wakashu. Yes, this was normalized. To become a samurai, you often had to become the lover of your master. Boys as young as 10 or 11 would serve their mentors in ways that had nothing to do with swordsmanship. There were even contracts that forbade the master from cheating with other boys, not girls. Once the boy hit puberty, the relationship ended and they became just friends. If that sounds messed up, that's because it is. Grooming? Check. Abuse of power? Check. But hey, at least they were loyal. Which brings us to the core of old Japan, loyalty to authority. Feudal lords, daimyo, and shoguns could do whatever they wanted. If a samurai was told to die, he died. That loyalty persisted into World War II, when young pilots carried out kamikaze suicide missions without question. Mobility? None. If you were born a farmer, you stayed a farmer. If your dad was a samurai, congratulations, you got a sword. But if you weren't, too bad. So how did Japan go from ritual sacrifice, poop-based agriculture, feudal power abuse, and normalized child grooming, to clean cities, high-speed trains, and cutting-edge technology? Well, the answer is simple. They lost the war, and then came Hiroshima and Nagasaki, two atomic bombs dropped by the United States, and Japan surrendered. The war was over. But Emperor Hirohito, he wasn't just defeated, he was smart. Instead of clinging to power through force, Hirohito changed the narrative. He reframed Japan, not as the aggressor, but as the victim of World War II. The country that had brutalized China, colonized Korea, slaughtered civilians in Southeast Asia, and ran horrific human experiments during the war, suddenly claimed the moral high ground. It was misleading, but it worked. By painting Japan as the victim of nuclear horror, Hirohito helped unify his shattered country. This victim mentality became the emotional foundation of post-war Japan, not to ignite revenge, but to push people to rebuild. And while that may sound manipulative, it was effective. After the war, America stepped in, not just to punish, but to rebuild. They dismantled Japan's military completely. The country was forced to become pacifist, an ideology that rejects violence as a solution. Their constitution was rewritten under US supervision. Military spending gone, war ambitions crushed. The focus shifted to education, innovation, and economic growth. Labor unions were legalized, women's rights were strengthened, education was reformed, and perhaps most importantly, the US dissolved Japan's zaibatsu, powerful industrial oligarchs who had bankrolled Japan's war machine. By breaking up these monopolies, Japan created a fairer market, which encouraged healthy competition. For the first time, innovation wasn't crushed by entrenched elites. If you had a good idea, you could build something from scratch. And then came the Cold War. America didn't want Japan turning communist, not with China and North Korea already on the red team. So the US gave Japan its blessing, and billions of dollars in aid, contracts, and technological transfers. Suddenly, Japan became America's favorite student in East Asia. Factories exploded with growth. Japanese products flooded the US market. Not made in China. Back then, it was all made in Japan. Cars, electronics, noodles, video games. And because these products were meant for export, they were built to last. High quality became the national standard, not just because of pride, but because the world was watching. So how did Japan transform from a feudal, brutal, ultra-nationalist empire into a peaceful, collective, high-tech society? It wasn't just because they evolved. It's because they had to. Defeat forced humility. US reform forced structure. Cold War politics offered support, and the Japanese people, tired of war, disillusioned with empire, embraced a new way forward. That's why today, Japan feels different. Yes, there are still traces of hierarchy, the senpai kohai culture, the occasional don't sit next to the foreigner on the train moment. But it's no longer feudal, no longer militaristic, and no longer hell-bent on domination. Instead, it's a nation shaped by loss and reborn through reinvention. So the next time you marvel at a perfect Japanese vending machine, a high-speed Shinkansen, or a quiet street with no litter in sight, just remember, behind that calm, organized society is a dark history, buried beneath layers of discipline, denial, and deliberate change. Japan isn't perfect, but maybe that's what makes its story so powerful.